Hi, everybody. I guess we'll get started. I'll talk slowly. There seems to, as people are trickling in, I'm assuming parking's better because the seniors are gone. Is that, it's not so bad? Okay, good. We haven't done this in a number of years, and welcome. I'm really glad that we're doing this live again. I am looking out there going, I don't even know my parents too well anymore, and that's sad because I'm used to doing so many of these that we get to know each other. So I hope you all come more to these and that they're worth your while. I'm Cindy Rivera. I'm the department chair for the school counseling department, and I'll do some intros here. Larry, did you want to say hello first?
I'll just say hello. I'm Larry Sullivan. I'm the grade level administrator for the sophomore class, and I feel very much the same way. I've seen a lot of names on screens as we've done different PFA activities, but not really seen people in person as much. So it's great to see you all here. I can tell you, well, first, I see some familiar faces who have had older children who have gone through the school already, and they will tell you what I'm about to tell you. You're in wonderful hands in terms of our school counseling staff and parent attention they give to kids at every stage here. Today, you're really going to start talking about post-high school, and I don't think there's a better team on the planet than we have here to help you through that process. I think I've told you before, I'm feeling a little unsettled about that myself. I have a sophomore in a high school in another town, and I know I'm going to be running to my colleagues for help and advice throughout that process. So you're in great hands, and I think you'll get a lot out of the program today and have a settled sense of where you go going forward. So nice to see you all.
Thanks. That's a great start. So with us today, we have Linda McGann, Nick Willett, Lori Keene, Lindsay Ryle, Erica Shadler, Dan Farina. I always used to start this saying, when I get nervous, I forget people's names. And then Lori said, stop saying that. You always remember everyone's names. There you go. And of course, we have Sue Carroll from our College and Career Center sitting over here too. The only person not here is Ann Vernon. She is on a plane coming back from London. She's been on a college tour over there as we've had a real rise in kids interested in UK schools. We're doing some exploring over there as well. So she's been out this week, and we're looking forward to hearing what she says next week. So today we're here, as you heard, to talk about your plans for your children as they move forward. They're halfway through their high school career, so we're talking to them, and now we're talking to you about making plans. They may not know what they're doing yet. They may not even want to think about it just yet. They're still kids. But we do want them to start to know the vocabulary, the things we're thinking about, things to be ready for next year, what's coming their way. So, and we want you to know what we're doing because we do really partner with you all the way through this. So we want you to know what those steps are. See how this works. There you go. So, as you can see, it's often something you're more anxious and ready to do than your kids are ready to do. And that's okay. We're going to get them there. And it may be, the timeline may be very different for every student. Next year is sort of that research phase. And that's the time we're really just trying to figure things out. There's not a whole lot to do in terms of applications and things like that, but there's a whole lot to do to get ready for applying to college. Four-year colleges is the focus today. We're talking about going on to college right after high school. But, if your child is not academically focused right now, or if they're considering other options right after high school, we are glad to talk with you about that as well. We do have a percentage of students who will go on to two-year schools first and then move on to something else. We are seeing a rise in kids who are taking a gap year or working, especially if financially they don't receive the packages they need in order to move on. Some kids take some time off, do a PG year at a private school somewhere, or they go into the military. That's not up there, but we do have some kids considering the military, and others going the trade vocational route, which there are a lot of very needed careers out there in that area, and we are looking to expand that part of our programs to make sure for some kids that may be the appropriate way to go. So as I said, today we're going to mostly talk about what to do, going to move on to college right away. Ultimately, the process is the same for all kids next year. You're going to be doing research, and you're going to be considering every option. And they may choose a different pathway in senior year, but for next year, it's all about figuring that out and trying to decide which way to go. So the process for next year is still very much the same. Who's been through this before? Who has older kids that have been through this before? Wow, not too many. Okay, so really new for all of you. And it's changing. So we'll be working with you on that. What you will realize, and probably the people who have been through this before, is that every pathway, every child is different. And every pathway is different. What you did for the first child, you won't do for the second child. We have kids at every stage, and even in a family, they're at every stage, and that's okay. Students will be all over the pathway, all over the place. Some have been coming in and talking to us since freshman year about college and have spreadsheets and ideas and things. Most don't. And some, it'll be the middle of senior year where they say, maybe I do want to go to college. And now we're applying to colleges. So there's no one pathway. There's no one way to do things. And so we do encourage you to not listen to all the chatter out there about what you have to do and what you should do. And the only way to get into school is this or that. Always double check those kinds of talks with us. This is just showing you that we as counselors have experienced an awful lot. We do travel. We haven't in the last couple of years, but we are back to it, as you can see with Anne being gone. But travel to see different colleges, go on college tours. We speak with college reps constantly. And especially, in the last couple of years, college admissions is changing a little bit. We certainly have seen that. And you may know this, that, where SAT and ACT prep was so important, now it's, most schools are score optional. And so we'll talk about that a little bit today as to how to proceed through that. We're reviewing decisions with our senior class now and talking to college reps. And we're seeing some shifts in how things are working. If any of you got to see our admissions panel in early April, you probably heard some of that. We've seen that some of our most popular schools have become more competitive, and admissions folks are digging beyond grades and scores to see how much the student appears to know about a school, how interested they really are, how clear the fit can be in terms of looking at schools. So we need you to think about that as well. Whether you can visit or not, it's important for your child to fully research every school and know why they are applying. We will talk more about that today as well. What hasn't changed, students will change their minds often. We've seen kids, and I've seen that in my own kids, their dream school that they were going to apply to may not even make the list and by the time they're applying. What's really where their best friends are loving the schools they love most, your child may go and not be terribly impressed by it. So there is a lot to do here. They may find a new interest or a course they're taking that they suddenly think about, oh, that's the way I want to go. I had a discussion with a junior yesterday where she was feeling uncertain about, I don't know what I'm interested in. I don't know what I like. And we really went through some of the career inventories, and this one thing kept coming back, that she's really interested in investigative things. And when I mentioned the idea of criminal justice or criminology, you see the spark went off. She'd go, I would love that. I've always wanted to do that. And it was so cool because she's been so nervous and so stressed about it, she couldn't even look at schools. So it happens, it comes, and it's such a good feeling when it starts to formulate for them. So enjoy the next couple of years as you watch your child grow and change. It may feel like a little bit of a roller coaster times, but it can also be wonderful to see your child start to identify where they want to go and what they want to do next. Broaden your perspectives on what's considered a good college. Help your child to do the same. We'll ask them to be more thoughtful and reflect on who they are and what it means for their future plans. This will be important when they write their essays and try to articulate this in their applications. And remember, we're your partners. We work very much as a team, and we can be a great resource for you and your child. Sue Carroll is in our College and Career Center, and she is a wealth of information. She will constantly be posting articles and information either in our Facebook page, on our Twitter feed, or even going to some of our, on our website looking, you can be looking at some of the video presentations that we put here. So our, see, I cannot work a thing like this, but on this web page, you can see that we put all the video presentations on here. So there's so much information that you can see. So right down here, you can see video presentations. Will take you to all the things you might need and find if you're looking for more information. So always use this. It's like something people forget about, but it's a great resource, and we put a lot of things on there. Okay, so this morning we are going to hear from Nick about what we've been doing with the sophomores. Lori will outline our junior year and talk about how to organize college visits, and Linda then will wrap it up with what you can do as a parent. So we're going to try to save the questions to the end, but we'll stay here till they're all worked on. So now how do I get back up there? I don't know how to work this thing without a mouse. I'm going to leave it to you. You do it.
Oh, no. Hopefully I can do it.
You don't have a mouse, the little thingamajig doesn't work, no?
There we go.
Oh, you got it. Good.
All right. So good morning, everybody. I'm Mr. Willett, Nick Willett. Nice to meet all of you. So I'm going to picture you guys all on a Zoom call right now because I think that's what we're most comfortable with after 2 years. So, and over here, this is your sidebar. So, keep your questions. You never know who's actually typing those questions. And over there, Mr. Shadler. So, all right. So I'm going to briefly talk about what we've done with your kids and where we're heading. Okay. So we've been getting to know them through different ways, through freshman meetings. A lot of your kids have come in to talk with us. We just finished up the sophomore program. So there's a lot of ways that we're getting to know your kids. So you as parents, I think the best thing you can do is really encourage them, if they haven't already, is to come in and get to know their counselor, right? Because we're going to be spending a lot of time with them, their junior and their senior years, so it's important to encourage them. During their freshman year, we actually kicked this off with sitting down and talking about an academic roadmap. So did anybody actually see the academic roadmap? Probably got them in the mail, right? So that's one of the first things that we did. If you don't have one, then you want to talk to your counselor about that. But we also introduced them to Naviance, all right? And Naviance, let me briefly explain what that is. So it's a web-based resource that supports career and college planning. So it's really going to become their go-to program. So how many have older kids here? So a lot of you are already familiar with it, but your younger kids may not necessarily be as familiar with it. It is linked to the school counseling website. Don't worry, I seem to get this question all the time. It's private, so only the kids will ever see what's actually in Naviance. So it's a really nice program that they'll start getting more and more used to. So through Naviance, one of the first assessments that they actually took was the Learning Styles Inventory. Did any of them show you that inventory? Kind of learned how they best learn. So I see some heads are shaking yes, some are shaking no. So you should probably go home tonight and say, hey, where's that Learning Styles Inventory, right? So So let me bring you up to where we are right now with working with the 10th graders. Counselors will have met with all the sophomores. We recently just finished our sophomore program where we went into the history classes, and we met with them to help break down the initial considerations as they start to plan ahead. Our goal is to try to get students more engaged in thinking about and reflecting on their post-secondary options. We feel the best way to start is for them to reflect and say, who am I as a student? What are my strengths? What might I want to do in the future? And what that means in terms of my career goals. And we feel that starting with a self-reflection and gaining an understanding of oneself is the point at which we believe is essential to doing solid research and planning for their life after high school. Now let's see here. They give us this fun little thing here. All right, great. There we go. So within Naviance, students, as you'll see up here, this is actually the front page that all your kids will see. And at the top there, you're going to see all the different tabs that are there. So starting with a self-reflection, in Naviance can compete, starting with a self-reflection and gaining an understanding of oneself is the point at which we believe is essential to doing solid research and planning. So within Naviance here, students can complete an array of inventories to help them reflect. Naviance does have a number of these. So as you can see under the self-discovery tab, there are a bunch of different ones. One is the intelligence, which looks at multiple intelligence theories and interests. The other is a career interest profiler, which looks at the Holland scale of traits. And then the other one is the personality. So that's actually the mini Myers-Briggs. How many have heard of the Myers-Briggs? So, well, your kids can actually take that through Naviance. It's something that costs thousands of dollars, right, out in the real world, and your kids are able to take that. So these are all very useful to your kids. And keep in mind that it is a computer, right? So it's not going to be 100% perfect, but it's a good starting point for them to learn and become more familiar with something that they may be interested in. So what we did with your kids this year is, in their history classes, is we had them take the Career Cluster Finder. And that gave them different clusters of careers that lined up with the assessment that they took, okay? So that's something that they recently took. They may have not shared that with you, but it's a really good starting point to kind of figure out where they are with things. And it may be too early to know what they want to do, but again, it's a good starting point. It's going to give them useful information to start on that research stage into junior year. So you'll see up here on screen under the Careers tab, there's a great option that once they've taken that assessment, they can actually go in if they're interested in business, interested in finance, whatever that may be for them, they can actually go and explore what that is. And it helps them learn a little bit more about that career, and this is an easy area for them to go into and start looking at. So what I tell my students after they've taken this assessment is that once they've taken it and it gives them their different clusters, and once they start seeing something that they may have interest, it's a good opportunity to start thinking ahead, right? So we have so many different electives here at our high school that are possible for your kids. So if it does come up or something that they're interested in business, they should really be looking at our business electives. If they enjoy cooking or doing different things like that, they should look at the foods and nutrition classes. Computer science, look at the sciences, AP Computer Sciences, if they have interest in coding and different things like that. All right, so now we're moving to the college tab, where you can explore how you can use Naviance results for researching colleges. And this will just be a brief overview of what we do. So we typically will lean towards the left of this screen. The right will be more in their senior year. So they can actually conduct a college search through advanced college search there, so they can kind of whittle down, like, where do they want to be in the United States, and that'll give them parameters to kind of figure out, okay, where do I want to be on the West Coast, East Coast, South, North, whatever that may be. And then that's going to spit out different colleges of where they might want to end up. And under research colleges there's a colleges I'm thinking about tab, and they can add all of those colleges there. And what I tell my students at this point is you can add as many colleges as you want to that list. over your junior year and your research stage into your senior year, we'll start helping you, or all the counselors will start helping their students whittle down to a good, appropriate level of colleges. All right, so from there, once they've actually added their colleges, then they can click those colleges, and that's going to take them within Naviance to any college that they've put on their list. So for instance, this is just an example of Bucknell, and it's a great way, and many of you probably already know this now, but a great way for them to go in and do virtual tours. As you can see here at the bottom, you can kind of get an idea of what the average cost will be each year, okay? But there's also some really nice information they can pull out from there is what are the acceptance rates? You know, is this a highly competitive school? What type of school is this? So that's going to give you information based on students that have applied from our high school. The other thing I like is the college overlaps. So if they're interested in Bucknell, they can actually go and hit the overlaps, and that's going to give them a list of other colleges that are very similar to Bucknell. So you're probably wondering if you don't have any kids or this is your first child going through this, how you can go to this. But you can actually go to the New Canaan High School website, and you will see a link to Naviance. We feel that it's important that you log in under your child's account because that's going to give you the best information to gather. So there's a one password, they click that, and you're in. So the best way is to go through your own child's account. All right? So I'm going to pass this over to Mrs. Keene, and thank you very much.
All right, good morning. Thanks, Nick. So I'm here to talk about what's up and coming for next year. First off, we're going to kick off the fall with your son and daughter taking the PSATs on October 15th. And registration will take place through an online program called Total Registration. And registration runs through September 7th through the 18th. However, some of you are writing that down. If not, that's okay. There'll be numerous emails, announcements. It'll be in our school counseling update to remind you next fall. And we encourage all juniors to take this exam. It's an important practice test that colleges will never see. It's practice only to help them prepare for the standardized test. It's a wonderful opportunity for them to get a baseline score, identify their strengths and weaknesses, and to really pinpoint areas of development for your students prior to taking the SATs. I often get asked, should I do a prep course over the summer? Doing a full prep course over the summer for the PSATs is of little value, as one, they're not really going to remember what they studied for the October exam. Think of it like training for a race. Test prep usually runs from 8 to 10 weeks before that SAT, and this is just practice. So what they're doing over the summer, they're not going to remember come springtime when they take the actual exam. And the really main purpose is to get a baseline. We want them just fresh and to get a true baseline. The best thing they could be doing over the summer to prepare for any standardized test or for their academics in general is to just read. Then in October, my bracelet is clanking. Then in October, we hold a financial aid night every year. You all are welcome to encourage and attend. Our past presentations have been filmed, and you could find them on our school counseling website under video presentations that Mrs. Rivera showed you earlier. And if you weren't there this year, I encourage you all to hop on as well to see. Now moving on to the winter. In December, we get to meet with all of your students in small groups. We talk about the purpose of the PSATs. We talk about what's up and coming in terms of the college research process. Then quickly moving into January, we host a family night, a parent night for you all, where we really talk about the research and outline the college process in great detail for you all. After that junior parent night, which hopefully will be in person because I certainly love seeing you all here in the audience. After this program, we start setting up individual post-high school planning appointments with just you and your son and daughter and your counselor. These are one-on-one meetings that are tailored to wherever you and your child are at this time. Once again, these start second semester of next year, and we further explain the college process. We develop a timetable, develop a testing plan. We'll either build an initial college list for your son and daughter to start researching, or we build upon what they already come with. And we also discuss other paths as well, such as 2-year, gap year, military, trade school. We meet your son and daughter and you all wherever you're at. About this appointment, you'll get a letter in the mail that notifies you of the date and time, in addition to some important forms that we love for you to fill out, which are really helpful for us when we plan for our individual meetings. And I also want to reiterate that these meetings are tailored to where you're at, and just as Cindy said earlier, there's a continuum of readiness. I always joke with my families, there's no right place to be except for in my office second semester of next year. All right. And now, first time using that, all right. Now for the lovely testing. Take a deep breath, everyone. Thanks to COVID, the majority of schools are score optional, and we hope that this continues way post-pandemic. Huge silver lining of the pandemic, which means if your son and daughter's scores are not reflective of their academic ability, then it's just simply not going to be included in their application packet. It really is that simple. And this really helps lighten up the pressure around standardized testing for them, which we're really, really grateful, right, as they have enough stress to begin with. So really nice to take that pressure off with the standardized testing. How many of you all attended the Zoom session that we had this February when creating a testing plan? A couple hands, great. If not, yet again, you could find that under our video presentations, which was really helpful. Even with score optional, it's important that you and your children have a plan that addresses what tests they're going to take, the SAT or the ACT, when to take them, how to prepare for them. And please remember, each of your children, they have their own path to walk. So please don't compare your students with what somebody else is doing. It'll only add unnecessary pressure. So in short of the SATs and the ACTs, we recommend that kids take the SAT or the ACTs 2 and sometimes 3 times. Typically, the first round of exams are in the spring, and the second round towards the end of the school year, and then that third, only if needed, would be in the fall. So for the SATs, let's talk this out quickly. The first round is usually in late March or in April when we host the Connecticut In-School SAT Day. Then students will take their second round either in May or June, depending on their schedule. And if they're in too many APs, maybe June would be a better second round for them. And then the third would be fall if needed. And it's plenty early enough for the college application season. And if you're only looking at 2 sittings, some students get 2 rounds of testing completed in the spring. Others will take 1 in the spring and the second in the fall. Each testing plan is tailored to each of your child's needs, and this will be discussed with your individual counselor. And also please remember, the majority of schools will super score, which means they're going to pluck for the SAT the highest critical reading, the highest math from all the multiple test states. And every year there's a growing list of colleges that super score the ACT. We have a really nice handout at the front desk there that gives you a nice breakdown of the differences of the 2 exams. We all feel, though, the majority of our students do stick with the SATs, but if you're curious about the ACTs, students could do an online free practice test in the fall of next year or early winter to determine which tests that they'll score better on. And research shows kids score about the same on both of them. That's why colleges accept either or. And there are some beautiful conversion charts to help you figure out what test you score higher with. But also the purpose of potentially exploring a practice ACT is to determine what test feels right? What test that they're more comfortable with, because if they're more comfortable with that test, they may have a little bit more confidence going into it. And in addition, many of the local test prep centers offer a free diagnostic ACT test for free. And it's important to remember, colleges accept either the SAT or the ACT. They do not have any preference over one or the other. And as a parent, it's your job to help keep them balanced next year. So often families get caught up in the testing process that kids' grades could drop, actually. And we don't want that to happen. And also the standardized test could create some unnecessary stress for them and you, as you could see with a nice little cartoon up there. And remember, the majority of schools are score optional. I can't reiterate that enough. So if they're not reflective of your son or daughter's ability, we're not going to send them. It's the transcript that's most important in college admissions. And a lot of you probably have never seen your son or daughter's transcripts, which is typical. So we are going to send a copy of your son or daughter's transcripts home in the summer so you could take a look at half of the transcripts that colleges will see, right? Because it'll be through freshman and sophomore year. Now, I know I just gave you a very quick rundown about what happens next year, but please remember, we're going to be informing all of you of all the upcoming events through our school counseling update, emails, all the programs that we have, and more. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now let's move on to the fun stuff and talk about initial college visits. I'm sure it's crazy that this chapter is upon you all, as it probably seems like yesterday that your children had their kindergarten orientation. My oldest is going into kindergarten next fall, so if anyone has any secrets how to slow down time, please let me know. So here you all are, planning college tours. Going on some college tours this summer could really put some excitement in the air for your son and daughter as they really start to begin to think about life after high school. It could also increase their motivation to keep their grades up and also set some academic goals. But also, folks, please remember, not all of your kids will be ready to see schools this summer. There is a continuum of readiness. These first visits should be very broad categories, right? Meaning explore large versus small, urban versus suburban, public versus private. Some of these thoughts they have never even thought about, but it's important just to see the differences. But keep it simple. When you're traveling this summer, try to plan some different college tours or even just visit a college nearby where you're vacationing to get an idea of what type of schools have to offer. And you could even use our backyard. You explore Yukon. It's large, public, rural. Stop by the Dairy Barn for some good ice cream while you're there. Fairfield, Quinnipiac, medium, private, on a very suburban campus. Trinity, small, private, urban. What does an urban school look like? Or if you're in the city, walk around NYU, even if they want to go to school all the way out west, just to start to do those defining visits of what feels right. Most importantly, what's going to be the best fit for them. And if you're up in Boston, stop by BU, Northeastern, see what a large urban campus is. We also suggest that your child takes a look on the college's websites to get an idea about those schools before they arrive. And if you have time, please sign up for the info session and the campus tour. The info sessions are designed to give detailed information about their admissions process, information about their school, majors, college life, residential life, and just to get the kids excited about what this next step is. But please, at this point, don't be put off by the admissions stats, right? Your child has at least 3 more semesters of classes before they apply. Encourage them to take notes on these tours and take photos, even if you're just walking through, and have them jot down notes, because the more schools you see, the more schools are going to blend together. And we also love it when kids come and see us with notes so we could talk and reflect to really see what they like and dislike. And as I said before, please keep in mind they may not be ready for an info session and a tour, and that is absolutely okay. If this is the case, though, just at least do a few drive-throughs on some local campuses or any campus that you may be near on vacation, just to dip their toes in the water to get a sense of what college is all about. And I also recommend keeping these visits fun, low-key. The college process is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and each step of the way will offer something new for students to learn about themselves and the opportunities that lay ahead. It's also a fun bonding experience for you and your children. It's an adventure, and as I said, tie in some fun things during these visits, such as ice cream or the such on tour days, because this process does go by quick. And now I'd like to turn the microphone over to Linda. You're welcome.
Thanks, Lori. Well, after all that information, tell me who's excited about the process and who dreads this process. So here you are, you're on the verge, you feel like you're on the verge of this whole thing, and how are you, as parents, going to help your child through it? And a lot depends on how you approach this process, I feel, and the tone that you set in your household for your student who may be feeling ambivalent about it, may be excited. So a lot depends on how you approach this. I know a lot of parents are eager and excited. They're the ones who are on the tours, answering the questions right up front. But we want to make sure that we follow, that we encourage you to do it jointly with them. It is not something, it's not your process, it's their process. And as a department, We want to make sure that we encourage your students to be independent in this. That's our whole focus and theme, is that they're in the driver's seat. And if they have goals that they want to achieve, it is up to them to follow that path with all of us supporting them. So we gave you a lot of information today. Hopefully these tools and resources will help you. We're not going to just throw a lot at you next year. We take it each step of the way, especially with the kids. Sometimes they can only handle so much as they go along. So your job is to find the right balance in your household. And, it's easy to fall into the trap of what psychologist Wendy Gralnick calls the pressured parent syndrome. And I'll just read you a little verb here. A visceral anxiety triggered when the ever-increasing competition that our kids face today switches on our physiological hardwiring. It's an internal pressure so strong that we can't rest until we feel our child is safe, in this case, gaining admission to a certain college. So what our hope is that we help you avoid following into that pressured parents phenomenon. So I have a few suggestions. We all have a few suggestions, and some of this is taken from a Middlebury College publication a number of years ago. I think it was, 5-6 years ago, but it's still very relevant today. Remember again that this process is about your child. So you've been nurturing them, they've growing in your house 16 years, and you have all these wonderful ideas about what they want to do. Well, surprise, they have lots of ideas too, and they probably haven't even shared it with you. I've had 3 kids go through this process. I never knew what was on their mind, and they never wanted to talk about it. So be prepared for that they don't want to talk about it, and you have all these great ideas. So try to avoid saying it's we or our process. It's really their process. Support and encouragement are appropriate, more appropriate than pressure and unsolicited advice. So what you want to do is not bring out the U.S. News and World Report at the dinner table and start reading it to them. Or, you may have a child that right from the start, I know we all have freshmen who came in and had 30 schools on their list, and I'm going to Europe, and so you want to help them find the balance to that also, because that child is also going to need to temper. 30 schools is not something that is appropriate. But you may also have that child that has no interest at all and really is interested in being a high school student and doesn't want to think about, because they love New Canaan, they love New Canaan High School, and they don't want to leave this place because it's a very comfortable place. So we help them go along that, and that is kind of your job also, to help them understand where they are in this process. I think a concrete thing that you can do is be a record keeper. There are so many details in the process between applications and deadlines and scholarships and tours. Be the record keeper, whether it's a notebook that you like. If you're old school and need a notebook to write something in and color code it, it makes you feel better. But or an electronic file. Help them organize all those emails they're going to start to get from the PSATs. They're going to be starting to get a lot of emails. Help them organize that. And then designate a day in the week that you really do talk about college. So if you talk to them every day about college, they're never going to listen to you. So designate a time and kind of stick with that. So, in our house, it was Sunday night because there was no sports or no activities, 7 o'clock, we talk about that. But then don't, as they're going out the door in the morning, don't go, hey, don't forget to do. You have to really stick to it, and it does work when you do it only once a week. We most of us in this room went to college, and we have ideas of what our college experience was like, and we hear lots of things. As we heard, there's lots of things happening in the world, and everyone loves to share their own college experiences and what they think is a way to get them into college. But I think it's really important, if you have a question about something, call this wonderful team right here, because we have the information, and we speak on a regular basis with admissions reps all the time. all the time. We can pick up a phone and call our local admission rep, and they can give us the information. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to ask us. I would say have a conversation soon about what your parameters are in this whole college process. So if you are okay with your child exploring colleges in California or the UK where Anne has been, or, down south, and you're okay with them going to a large public university, which most of our kids, I think that's a trend. Everybody wants to go and paint their face red and scream for their football team. Now, I would say now is the time for you as parents to get on the same page and share that with your child. I would say in junior appointments that we've all had, sometimes they can be uncomfortable if you have certain thoughts, your child starts to express these thoughts, and you're not on the same page. So I think it's a conversation to have starting now, and to talk about cost. I was looking at my script from like a couple of years ago, and it said private schools can cost over $60,000. Well, that number is $80,000 now. So I think you have to be realistic about your own financial situations and where you think you want to put your resources, and what is appropriate if you have other children in your family, and just what your own personal situation is. And I think that kids need to start to understand that. I don't think that, I think in the past a lot of parents have not wanted to talk about financial situations to their kids. We've prepared this, but $80,000 a year is a lot of money. And so I think it's an important thing to include them in that adult type of conversation. I think that this may be the first time in your child's life they have disappointment. They may not gain that first, I'm going to apply early decision, and they don't get in, and it can be very disappointing to them. But I think as parents, you can really set the tone early on to say, many colleges out there, many opportunities. You are terrific young people, and you will find a great place. So I think that there are things out of our control, out of our control, and out of your control at colleges. They have their own initiatives. Each year, they define their initiatives. It may not be a good fit for your student. So when they don't gain admission, it isn't a reflection of their personal situation or what you've provided to them. It can be beyond our control. So we try to stay on top of those initiatives, but sometimes we never know what a college is looking for in that particular year. So I think that probably one of the most important things is let them be a high school student. This process can take a life of its own, and it's a 2-year process, and they're still high school kids, and we want them to develop their own interests. I think what we've seen lately in the college process is that students can have great grades and a great transcript, but if they can't convey to a college their own personal interests, if they can't speak with passion about something that they'd like to do on that college campus, who they are as an individual, what they stand for, sometimes that hurts them in the process. So I think as parents, can be your role, is to help them define that. There's just a few things that I'd like to share. At the end of this process, you're still going to be their loving parents. Hopefully you're still talking with each other and speaking with them, by the time senior year comes. But there's lots of teachable moments in these next year and a half before they apply. There is a psychologist, Michelle Borba, who spoke in a recent educational leadership article, who said, nurture their strengths and interests to boost their confidence and self-awareness. We want to make sure that they're confident going into this process, that they have it. They've all been educated at a great school. They know how to write. They know how to read. They all will find their place. Have them work on self-control and their healthy decision-makings. Ask them to lift their heads up from their phones. We ask them all the time to do that, to look at the world around them and understand what's happening and find their place in that world. promote a curious mindset and creative problem solving. There's going to be pitfalls as they go through this process and beyond. We want them to be able to be strong and resilient and say, okay, I'm going to veer off this path and maybe that's a better path. Foster a I got this attitude in this whole process. And you yourself be optimistic when you approach it. I know it can be daunting as parents, particularly first time going through, but be optimistic that your child will find a college and you have a lot of support here to help you. Okay? With that, I guess we'll take some questions.
Thank you, everybody. Go on. All right, questions? What didn't we explain well?
Slide that you had with the Bucknell information on there from the Naviance, and it said a 31% acceptance rate. Is that good? Is that bad? Is that normal? Like, I don't know what.
Okay,
the
yeah.
acceptance rate.
So you'll see that as you go in Naviance. So our most selective schools, you know, the Ivies, the MITs, the probably less than 5% acceptance rate. So that's why, you know, it doesn't matter that your child has 105 average and perfect scores. That's only the start of it. That's the pool they're looking at. They're only going to take 5% of those students. So that's why it's so difficult to get in there. A place like Bucknell has, you know, so they're taking a larger pool of kids. So 31% is, they're still, you know, one of those top schools, but it's a little bit easier to get into. And then you'll see schools that, are more like something like Montana State, which has open enrollment, so they have 100% acceptance rate. So, so there's many different. It's across the gamut, and so you will see that. Okay.
What is the recommended number of schools that they should be applying to?
And I want to say anybody can answer this. I don't have to answer all of these, so but that's an easy one. We always recommend around 10 schools is sort of the average. Some of our kids get up into the 20 school range, and it's too much. They cannot seriously really articulate to those colleges why they want to go to your particular college. So I would say 10 to 15 is probably where we're at now. If they're applying early and here early, that changes up their list as they're going through. They may not apply to as many schools, so the average can be very misleading. If a child gets into the early decision school, they've applied to maybe 1 or 2 schools. So.
And I would say with that list, what you want to make sure is that your child will go to every one of those schools, because if they only get into 1 or 2, they don't want to be disappointed. So it's not almost the number, it's whether or not they're appropriate schools for the
Yes,
child.
we do really look at the spread of those. So you apply to a few reach schools, a few what we would call target schools, you 50-50 chance of getting in, or you kind of hit exactly the average student for that child, and then you want to have likely schools where your GPA and scores may be above the average student for that school. We would call more likely that you would get in. So we want to make sure. So many times kids throw something on at the end because we're the ones who are monitoring that and say you don't have any likelies on your list, and we want you to add a few schools, and we suggest some, and then they throw it on, never look at the school, and then come time to really make decisions, and that's the only schools they've gotten into. So we don't want that to happen. It at times does, though. So you have to be very careful that they like those backup schools and feel good about it. Yep.
Is their transcript available to us online or in Naviance, or is it something you have to give to us?
Yeah. Go ahead.
We'll send that to you. It's not something.
Gone. Okay. It's not something that you all can access in PowerSchool, is where it would be housed, but we'll send that home to you. And if ever you wanted to see your child's transcript, you can always reach out to us, and we can get that to you, but it's not actually housed anywhere outside of PowerSchool.
In Naviance, it does show what their unweighted average is right now. So you can see what their GPA is to begin the process. At the end of, so in a few weeks, and at the end of sophomore year, we do put the weighted average in. So over the summer, the weighted academic GPA will be what's in Naviance, and which is what we use for comparing students in terms of acceptance rates and stuff. And Naviance has, that's what's good about it. What's in Naviance, I can't remember if you said that or not, Nick, is just New Canaan High School students who's been, not who, but GPAs and SAT scores that have been accepted at those particular schools. So you can see where your child would fit.
For this summer, if you have an athlete doing like IV clinics or if you're visiting around vacations, what's your advice for the engagement with admissions? Because a lot of them don't have official tours because the kids are not in school. So should the parent reach out? Obviously the kid will be reaching out to the coach, but how do you kind of let them know you're interested when they're not having anything official?
You want to go ahead?
A lot of times, if you're driving through a school, outside of admissions, they will have a little slot where they have little cards that you fill out, and you put names and address in it, and they know that you've been on the campus. I also think that as an athlete, when you start to fill out, when you go on their website and you're filling out all that athletic information, that gets populated throughout the school that you have an interest in the school. So if there is an interest and they want to email one of the reps and just say, we're coming through in August, there's no tours, what can you suggest? We can also provide that information.
And also, a lot of schools right outside their admissions office will have a little QRL code or whatever that's called that you could scan, then you could just take a walking tour that's guided. So it's a nice opportunity as well.
Is that what you were asking about?
Yeah, it was really around wanting to get an official tour, even if they don't have them. Is that something that colleges do? Because they do a lot of ID clinics, but they don't necessarily have a lot of the academic side paired with it.
Right. So that's part of the process probably in junior year. You'll be hearing from coaches and you'll be hearing, interest, but then you want to know whether you're interested back. And during the school year is a good time because there's students there, much more so than in the summer. Summer tours are great too because you get a sense of a school, but it probably makes more sense during the school year to try to get a sense of it if it's rising to the top of the list.
Is there still a big emphasis on demonstrated interest online? Was that home?
So the question was about demonstrated interest. Is that still a thing? I think it is still a very large thing. If not, nothing else, it's growing because we've had students who were deferred or waitlisted, and when we asked why, they were well above the average for that particular school. They said, we haven't seen any interest. We haven't seen them visit the website very much. They didn't go on one. We had a program in your area and they didn't come. The rep came to school and they didn't sign in. So they are tracking those things when a student is starting to look. It's really gotten to the level of how many times did they check our email that we sent you? And we sent them 7,000 of them. So how many times did they open it? It is still, it's not to that level, I'm exaggerating, but it is something to show some level of interest and beyond just going on the website and visiting that. So not necessarily that you have to travel and take a tour. That's still at times difficult, and certainly if it's across the country, no one has any expectation that you're getting on a plane to do that. But if you're not doing that, then what else are you doing to find out about the school? Yep.
Does New Canaan have a centralized system of scholarships? Because there's a lot of niche private scholarships out there, like for kids in that kind of thing. Is there a way that you track it and flag it to students?
Yes, we do. Sue Carroll, please talk about that.
There's a place on Naviance for scholarships. But actually, our registrar, Lisa Granite, does a great job. There's, under the New Canaan, on our website, under New Canaan High School Scholarship Foundation, there's all local scholarships. And as much as the Got Milk Scholarship is worth a lot of money, it's impossible to get. Local scholarships are really the way to go. But also, most money comes from the college itself that your child chooses to matriculate at.
So when you were applying to schools, schools will offer merit aid or if you're applying for financial aid, that will be part of the acceptance package that you get, is what they are offering to assist you in paying for the school. And you'll see that many private schools are wealthier than the public schools, and so those packages may be much larger than the public schools, which are less expensive, but they may reserve their funds mostly for in-state students. So it's a tricky situation. I know some people have said, well, just apply to publics because they are cheaper, but you may get more money from a private school. So it's worth it to at least try it and check it out.
Is the weighting of GPA specific to our school, or is that universal across the country?
Anybody else on anything like so?
Every school has a different weighting system. For our school, any honors, AP courses, you multiply the semester grade by 1.075 and guarantee your kids know that. And also part of the college application, the things that we send from our office, we send a profile, which explains our grading scale, our weighting scale, and so forth. If you're curious what our school profile is, you could find it right on our school website. And it really gives the colleges a lot of information about our school and our community if they're unfamiliar. So it's a great piece of our package to look into.
And then colleges will take that information and do what they will with it. We offer the unweighted average and a weighted average. We offer an academic average. We offer a comprehensive average. So many schools will take the unweighted average and add their own weighting so that it's across the board, particularly for APs and things like that, that they'll give the same weighting across high schools across the country. So some schools will do that.
Better off with an honors class and a slightly lower average, or a non-honors and a slightly higher average?
The question of the century from every college. It's always asked. And colleges will come back saying, we want the higher average from the higher level courses. So that's a non-answer. We really are looking at a good balance. Schools, depending on your student, I mean, we have kids who never take an honors class and get into a four-year school, so I want everyone to know that. But we do try to get our kids to really challenge themselves and take a balance of courses. It makes no sense to take a lot of AP classes but you don't get A's in them, or you get C's in them. If you're getting C's in an AP class, it means you're not ready for an AP class. So that's really important. Does anyone want to say more about that?
I'll chime in. A bigger picture to look at is, we want your children to be challenged but not overwhelmed. Okay, so that's a good way. We want them happy, balanced. We want them involved in extracurricular activities. Colleges aren't looking for the highest curriculum, yet they go home and do homework. And they're not involved. They want them well balanced. What are they bringing to the campus? So the question is, maybe going up in an honors course eventually of an area of strength, of an area that they're interested in. And that's something that your son and daughter, when they met with their counselor for scheduling, that they would talk about. And also, our teachers are fabulous with their placement course recommendations. So we really look at that too when planning curriculum in the classes for the following year. And students are never stuck in any particular level with an outstanding year, and let's say an M2 level of math, the following year they could move up. So, which is really nice. It opens up some doors.
Yeah, and I would just add to, all of us as counselors had, in-depth discussions with your kids, when scheduling time happened in March, to talk about how important it is as a junior to make sure that you have a balanced schedule, because it's an important part, or it's probably the most important year for them. So, so that's always a good discussion, for you to have with them also, to make sure they're not overwhelmed. Because a lot of times they feel like they have to take all these APs, and as Mr. Rivera said, that's not entirely true, right? You want them to do that, but you want them to be at that level also. So we've had plenty of kids get into nice colleges with no APs. I've had plenty of them. So it's a discussion.
I'd also add that I think that our teachers have been really thoughtful about the process, about recommending students to an AP or an honors class, and if they're recommended for it, they also will tell them, you may struggle in this class and you have to be ready to take a low B or a high C average. So if a teacher says that to a student, that's something that you should take into consideration, because that may not be acceptable to a student, and they might be better off, let's say, going to grade level U.S. history, because then if they do well, they can go as senior up to AP U.S. government or AP comparative government. So it's really important to listen to what the teachers have to say about how well they'll do on the next level. If you have any questions about that, you should really contact the teacher too. I have found them consistently spot on with their recommendations for kids for next year. They know the curriculum the best.
Can you elaborate? You mentioned a colleague went to England looking at schools. More of the background of that, is there more interest from kids applying to schools outside the U.S.? And what are the reasons for that? Is it curriculum, costs, selectivity?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things involved with it. A bachelor's degree in the UK is a 3-year program. The cost is significantly less. The plane ride over there is probably faster than the plane ride to California these days. And it's very transferable back to the States. I also think, when I went over there, it's very exciting to be in a more international community, and kids who are open to that do well with that. I also think the type of student who would be interested in that has to know what they want to study. There's no undecided majors. You are applying to that school for that particular major, and you are studying that. So there's different ways to look at it. The application it's their own version of a Common App. It's called the UCAS system. So there's one application for 5 schools. You're only allowed to apply to 5 schools. And so it's one application for all of those. The schools in Scotland, like St. Andrews or Edinburgh, are much more similar to the US. They're 4-year degrees. I think St. Andrews is on the Common App even. So that's more similar to what we do here. And the life is slightly different. I think I saw University of Manchester, and I might as well have been at Harvard, because it's so intellectual and so such a beautiful ancient campus, and in a smaller city like Boston. It was just very cool. So there's good and bad about all of it. I think we're going to try to run a program in the fall to really get more information. We used to run if you're thinking about England, this is what you can do, and we're hoping to bring them back next year. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And certainly if you have questions, your counselors are here. If you want to make sure your children are on the right track for what you're thinking, or we have to change tracks, please come see us, and we can help you with any stage of that. Thanks so much.